Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to cover some news from Deloitte, because Deloitte is in the news, and they're in the news for a bad reason, or it might be a good reason depending on how you look at it. They are in the news because they could potentially win a $135 million contract in the state of Florida in the United States. Now, why is this big news? Well, first of all, it's a lot of money. But second of all, this is big news because Deloitte messed up the unemployment systems in Florida, and this is another government contract for them. Now, Deloitte was paid $78 million in total for a contract for unemployment work where they were going to be upgrading the unemployment systems in Florida, and they're being sued for that, for delays and dysfunctions related to that system, because if you're unemployed and you need a check, you expect the money sooner rather than later. And the issues with the system cause the delays. And people are blaming Deloitte, but Deloitte is saying that it's not their fault. Now, all this news, this bad news about Deloitte and unemployment systems, is not deterring other states from awarding work to Deloitte, though. Colorado recently awarded Deloitte unemployment work. I think that was for about $3 million. New York awarded work to Deloitte that adds up to over $80 million, which involves implementing call centers, data entry automation, and other areas. And this unemployment crisis is a huge boom for consultants, but specifically for Deloitte. They've won over $140 million worth of work to date related to unemployment work just since COVID started. And how does this happen? And specifically, how does this happen after Deloitte messed up and faced such criticism for what they did in Florida as it relates to unemployment? Well, I believe there's many reasons, and I'm going to go over those. First off, this new contract is not with the unemployment agency. It's with Florida's health agency, and Florida's health agency has determination over who wins. And that agency is involved in selecting the consultant that implements this program. And this program it relates to Medicaid. It's a Medicaid program, and it's basically going to be updating the technology. And the health department is different than Florida's unemployment division, so that's one of the reasons why Deloitte's even being considered. And if it was up to Florida's governor, he would not give the work to Deloitte. He would not give the work to Deloitte because his constituents are very mad and he's disappointed in the work that they did before. And he said if it was up to him, he wouldn't give it to them. He said the only reason Deloitte is being considered is because they seriously underbid other firms like Accenture and IBM. This means they came in with the lower offer to the state. However, other people said that it isn't true because the part about how much the contract's going to be and what people are bidding hasn't even come up in negotiations yet. And Deloitte hasn't actually won the work yet either. That's something to remember. They just made it to the next round. Because often these states and clients, they put out a request for proposal, which means they ask companies if they want to bid on this work. And obviously many companies do, and Deloitte is one of those companies. But I doubt the health agency will award the work to Deloitte after all the bad news that has come up with them, even considering Deloitte. So I doubt that anybody at the health agency is willing to take all the heat that's going to come from this. But who knows, maybe they will. It's possible. Another reason that Deloitte might be selected is because they probably changed their teams since the Florida unemployment issue. Big Four firms often switch partners out after a crisis. And after they switch out the partners, they bring in specialists from around the country and say that they have a whole new team and they have a new devotion to better work. However, this is usually not the case. The partners that pitch to the client and they pitch the sales pitch are often not the partners that perform the work. And if Deloitte wins this work, they better be careful not to mess up, because if they have 2 failed systems in Florida, that will look terrible. And that will look really, really bad for them for any lawsuits if they failed twice in Florida. And honestly, I'm not sure how Deloitte isn't conflicted out on this engagement, since they are currently being sued in Florida for another government implementation system. And even if they aren't conflicted out in some professional manner, they should be conflicted out just internally. The partners should get together and understand the risks. And this is a huge risk for their reputation because right now, basically every Florida newspaper is saying, how is this firm that screwed up our unemployment system even being considered for the Medicaid system? And it's just tons of bad press. And I know some people say any press is good press, but this is terrible because like people are just discussing Deloitte as if they're the worst consulting firm on the planet and they're just corrupt. So I don't know why Deloitte bid on this. I mean, it's obviously has to do a little bit with greed, but I don't know. After everything that happened, and if Deloitte honestly believes that they had nothing to do with the unemployment system as far as what went wrong, then they shouldn't want to do business in Florida right now. Because if they believe they didn't do anything wrong and they're still being sued by Florida, then why would you want to work in a state that sues you for doing good work? So it's very confusing what Deloitte's doing here. And another reason that I think Deloitte might be considered in this case is that states have a sense of urgency during COVID-19 as it relates to unemployment and other financial aid systems. With people losing their jobs and losing income, there is more of a need for better and fast-acting unemployment and financial aid systems. And bureaucrats and politicians are busy trying to get money to the people and don't consider the consultants that they're hiring. They just like the people that look the best in suits and have the best pitches and obviously come in with the best price. And the Big Four look good in these pitches because they have so many employees that can hit the ground running. And if you're a government bureaucrat or politician, you might not know the difference between the Big Four and a consulting firm. And if you need something done now, it looks really good when the Big Four come in and pitch and they say they have teams of hundreds or thousands of employees that can hit the ground running tomorrow. Because if you want your system up and running and Deloitte's saying they could put 1,000, 2,000 people on this today, then you're sitting there thinking, well, this system could go online in a couple of months. So it looks really good. But I hope Deloitte doesn't win this. Just for their own sake. But also, I don't think the Big Four have a ton of experience here, and they're taking on a lot more risk than they need to. But Deloitte is obviously making a bunch of money. The Big Four accounting firms are struggling right now. They're laying people off. Deloitte laid off 5,000 people. And so they're going to take a lot of the work that maybe they shouldn't. And this unemployment work seems to be in the hundreds of millions and probably in the billions by the end of the year. So they're going to keep taking it. But I think there's a lot of risk for Deloitte in this area, especially if they use the same teams and those same teams aren't getting the job done. So that's the update for today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and our YouTube channel. And also try to support us by donating by using Buy Me a Coffee, and the link is in the description. And there's also other ways to support us in the description. Thanks for listening.